Okay, hey Erin, how's it going?
Fantastic. So nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, taking time for us. So I know you're speaking at the conference. We're about 2 weeks away as we record this, and I'm on the rat wheel spinning frantically right now. But love the fact that we get to talk to you a little bit and get to hear some of your thoughts on how things are going. So maybe we could just start by just telling us what you do and what you've been doing
Absolutely.
up to at Amazon.
Absolutely. So I am a very long time Amazonian. I will hit my 25-year anniversary at Amazon in October.
Wow.
So it's been a crazy ride, my friend. I started as a web developer in the year 2000 in the music part of the website. And then over time, I've worked in different tech teams, largely on the retail side of the house for about 20 years. The last 3 years, I was the head of product for Amazon's internal software development tooling team. And it was in that role that I actually started getting involved in the AI space. So Amazon, like everyone else, got, as all of these coding tools and things were starting to come out, we're like, oh, this look great. Let's see what we can do with them. And so I
Yeah.
got pulled in on a lot of those conversations and just this technology is like nothing I've seen before. It's amazing. And there's so much potential. But I think it's one that we need to do some thoughtful engineering and shaping around. So earlier this year, I joined what is now called the Agentic AI organization within AWS. My role is I'm a product manager. I do a lot of things like tech strategy, product strategy work across a fairly large portfolio, but get involved in uh, a lot of applied tech. How do we take this innovation and really make it something that's really high utility for the world?
Yeah, which is, an kind of unparalleled opportunity to do that stuff now. So you're customer facing are you internal or are you customer facing
That's a
tools?
great question. My role actually is both. So I work I'm embedded within the product team. I work, directly day to day with the product teams as they're building, but I also have the privilege of working both across Amazon because there's some amazing things going on here, but
Right.
also I get to interact with our customers a lot, and have just met some really amazing uh, very innovative customers who are doing some really cool things with this technology.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you've seen Amazon go through so much, and that's sort of the isn't is that the genesis story of AWS itself is like, hey, we built this amazing scalable infrastructure. Maybe we should sell it to customers, and now you're doing the same thing with AI, or how's
I
it?
think that there's absolutely truth to that. I think there's also, some truth to there was just, sort of clear opportunity out the industry. But of course, the we had the experience to do it well. And, I think when, in the AI space as well, obviously there's a ton of amazing innovation going on across the industry. There's been some amazing breakthroughs, particularly coming out a lot of these, science startups and things like that, that we all owe a lot to. But Amazon has been a sort of a big data user for decades. And it's just the bread and butter of how we run.
Yeah,
So when this tech came along, we're like, oh, cool. Like we see some things we could do with that. And it's not always the most sexy thing to do with it, but it is like just like it's such a powerhouse to solve problems in ways we've never been able to solve before. So
right.
even within Amazon, there's these like, well, where do you use AI? And like, where are we not using it? Where are we not experimenting with it? Where have we not put it into production? Like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And you different levels of maturity doing all sorts of different tasks. So for me, in the space that we're working in, Amazon itself is an interesting petri dish for how we take this, truly innovative, data science work and combine it with really solid, thoughtful engineering
Mhm.
to produce, like, as I say, really high utility results.
Makes a ton of sense. I can't imagine the kind of stuff that you're working on, the data that you have access to. So it must be super cool. One of the things I saw in your abstract that hit me was just the idea of the Renaissance
Right.
worker. And I know you studied art history, right? So
I
that's
did. I did.
so
You know,
tell me, yeah.
I got hired at Amazon at a time when, we'll just say technology education hadn't caught up with the needs of the industry at kind of at that dot-com boom. And so there was a whole bunch of us who had liberal arts degrees that were self-taught technologists and came into the industry. And, of course, there's still a few of us hanging around. Um,
Yes.
but, I think that, um, Amazon has had this culture of two pizza teams for, oh, I want to say they showed up in, I want to say 2003, 2004 era. I know when they first showed up, we were all like, what? And then of course now they're so core to how we function. But um, one of the premises of a two pizza team is really a this idea of sort of a fully encapsulated group that's empowered to really move the needle on a problem space.
Mm,
But I think what we found as technology has gotten more complex, as there's just more to know, as problem spaces have gotten harder to deal with, as security and resilience and all of our expectations continue to go up, the autonomy of two pizza teams it's been a hard-won battle to kind of keep that going.
mm,
And you end up getting all these weird interconnects, right? Like, oh, well, I can get this far, but then I need to bring in security expertise. Or I can get this far, but now I need to bring in somebody who's able to go really do the market research.
mm,
Um, and and I think it's at Amazon's really large scale, this is what a lot of startups, a lot of people who are in a place of their passion who are like, hey, I want to get going on building a solution, have historically had this dilemma of, well, I can either be a deep tech expert and know how to make the computers do the things,
right.
or I can be a domain expert. But those unicorns who can do both well and still sleep is hard. And I think when we look at this technology and the promise that we're starting to see in it and the promise that we're starting to realize in it, we're getting back to this idea of enabling smart people with great ideas to really use these tools as tools
Right.
and not have to be deep technology experts in order to get security and resilience and scalability and all of that stuff out of them.
Yeah, that's a super good point. One of the things that we're seeing as a pattern this year in the conference is an explosion of what we call innovator exhibitors. So they're
Mhm.
people that we have this special kind of class of exhibitor that is very small. They have to qualify for it, and so we've really not had very many of them. These are very early stage startup, a lot of time pre-funding. And we weren't really focused on it the last 2 years because all the big companies are there and they're taking up the space. This year we just saw this massive to your point, right? We just saw this massive influx, and we actually had to start reconfiguring the exhibit hall to take out some of the big booths because we were just getting this, you know, windfall of requests for these small companies or even solo folks that are just literally they have a working SaaS system that they built themselves with AI. So yeah, 100% exactly what you're saying. And
Yeah.
we were just in a planning meeting yesterday trying to think through what 2026 looks like. And I was saying, I think I just think it's hard to predict, but I think everybody with an idea will be able to pursue that and actually build something useful, and it'll be really interesting to see. So I think that we're just going to see this explosion of stuff, of companies and useful things. Is that kind of how you see this agentic thing playing out?
I do. I mean, if you think about the early days of the web, right? The companies that were really big at the time were the companies that were building the core tech itself, right? You certainly you did have companies like Amazon that were doing retail audit, things like that. But
Sure.
as you say, we even got into AWS pretty fast, right? And so but then we started seeing innovation on top of that technology, right? This is where our DoorDashes started popping up and Ubers and Lyfts and Intuits and all sorts of service, you know, companies that of course have technology at their heart,
Right.
but their purpose is in service of a greater need.
Right.
And I completely agree with you. We're going to see that with AI too, right? The last couple of years we've been seeing this sort of like, how do we build the core tech itself? But now we get to transition to the, what are those amazing ideas that people are now able to dive into because this tech exists and didn't before?
Yeah, it's super interesting to think about because, like you said, I mean, it's funny because I've been buying stuff from Amazon since 2000. I think maybe 99, but I think 2000. Just books. I remember and watching, the evolution of Amazon basically becoming one of the best technology companies in the world because it had to,
Because
right?
we had to.
It had no choice. And yeah, to your point, we're starting to see that future where you might not have to, or you don't have to anymore to
Right.
service, to sell an enormous number of books or products. You don't have to do that anymore, which is going to be quite
Yeah.
interesting, right?
I think that for every service provider, your goal is always to take really great care of your customers at an increasingly large scale without losing that fidelity of care.
Right.
And that's a really big challenge, right? That is, it's a huge headwind for companies to scale to be able to serve more customers well. And I think that what we get to see with this technology and its ability to do things like, you know, rapidly collate data and provide insights or, you know, be proactive about following up with customers or, um,
Right.
gathering data from the folks who are out in the field with customers and making sure that that gets into the right place and used the right way. It's such an enabler for anybody who's building customer services, which is pretty much anyone, right? We all live in service of others,
Yeah.
um, to take great care of their customers at scale. And that's obviously been the impetus for a lot of Amazon's technology innovation over the years is how do we continue to have fidelity of taking care of our customers at scale?
Right.
Um, and why we ended up in ML and why AI is interesting to
Right.
us and all that stuff.
Right. So I mean, I know you oversee a lot of stuff and product management is your focus. Can you tell us about sort of like the stuff that you're working on or what is going to make it into, or how is it going to be used, I suppose, in the next few months, or what's being used now?
So, obviously the tip of the spear has been in the developer space. I think that is sort of a no-brainer because you see technologists building for their own problems initially, and
Right.
it's also a very data-rich environment, fairly well structured. So it has all of the sweet spot attributes that make AI work really well. Um, Yeah, so I think so that I think has been teaching us a lot, both when in Amazon and across the industry over the last couple of years. But we'll just say that some of our non-tech peers are looking on it at our work with envy and saying, well, when can I get something that cool too? And even adaptation of tools initially built for tech problems in others. Like my single favorite AI tool is QCLI. Like I use that to for things that it was never intended to be used for.
Yeah.
But it's got access to my file system. I have all sorts of bizarre workflows with it using markdown files and things like that. Um, but so I think that we're going to start seeing so one, as these coding agents and the patterns of using them get more reliable, where you really truly can use sort of natural language description to describe the technology that you want to have built and have good expectations that a good tech artifact's going to come out of that.
Mhm.
You're going to enable smart people who have business problems to actually build tech to solve their own problems, right? I'm going to acknowledge I haven't coded professionally probably for over a decade. Um, but I'm now coding again. which
Yeah.
one for me is super fun because I can now solve my own problems with tech. And like I appreciate I'm not the poster child of a non-tech worker because obviously I've been working technology.
Right.
Um, but what I get to see there is the promise of kind of the arc of evolution of this stuff. I think the other examples we're seeing, I think research agents are really interesting.
Mm.
Um, uh, we've been having a lot of enthusiasm and experimentation with those internally, up to and including our executives, who, of course, executives of a large company in general end up getting into the point where they're reading reports. They're not doing the primary research. Stuff is being brought to them. And we're now seeing a bunch of our execs using these research agents like on the side to do their own research. And so you'll
Hmm.
show up in a meeting with an executive and they're like, yeah, I went and did this research. And you're like, that's awesome, right? Like
Yeah.
that's outstanding. But you also get to see it at the other end of the scale, right? So you've got uh, you know, sort of day-to-day, knowledge workers who get the same set of tools.
Yeah.
Um, and so those types of things, like, I was super interested in exploring the potential of better multilingual support. Um, and so I threw that against a research agent the other day, and it made a really compelling case that I should be leaning into that more. And I'm like, that sounds great. I think multilingual, I am worried that right now, natural language, for the most part, means English.
Yeah.
To really get the most out of these models at this moment in time, the research says that you need to be prompting in English. And I think that is a massive area of opportunity to really enable the world
Mm.
to do things. Um, but to go back to your question, I do think that, the ability to explore data, the ability to, like build an arbitrary dashboard, right? Without really having to be a business intelligence engineer.
Right.
Um, the ability to explore your curiosity, and then be able to do something about it is, particularly at really big companies, like sometimes it can feel difficult to do. As a company, you may feel like you have historically not had the resources to do it,
Yeah.
and suddenly you can.
So yeah, that's interesting. How do you have you seen examples where that's happening within Amazon or in AWS where either an executive or somebody that's traditionally non-technical has built something and now it's actually being used or become part of the standard
I'm going to
tools?
give you a silly example, but maybe one that's illustrative of sort of some of the possibilities. So Amazon, we've got this thing called the phone tool. And in the phone tool, there are phone tool icons, and phone tool icons are very prized. If you go back to the early 2000s, the concept of ego boo, you've got, basically this, sorry, it's way back. I worked in the reputation team for a while. So so phone tool icons at Amazon motivate behavior. It's just one of these things, right? And we wanted, to encourage all of Amazon's workers to really lean into using AI tools because, we kind of see this as a virtuous cycle. As our own workforce becomes increasingly comfortable with AI, they start thinking about how to use it to solve problems in different ways. So we knew that one of the ways to strongly encourage people at Amazon to play around with AI tools was to give them phone tool icons. Now, historically, to build the data pool, data queries and all of that stuff, we would have expected that there needed to be some dev team that would have had to go build this, like, leaderboards and all of that stuff. Well, one
Mm.
of our product managers did it with Kiro over the weekend.
Nice.
And so it's like, I know it's a silly example, but like, it's just that, like, we knew that that was important from a cultural perspective, but it was one of these things like, when am I ever going to get a dev team to prioritize building phone tool icons?
Right.
Um, but sure enough, do I check where I'm at on the leaderboards? Oh, of course I do. I'm
That's
working on that next icon.
So the phone, okay, so the phone tool is something that everybody uses all the time.
all the time.
And and the icon, or it's basically like the bragging rights of having the
The
icon.
bragging rights, right?
Yeah,
And you can get them for all sorts of things. And in this instance, we wanted to get them to encourage exploration of AI tools.
yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And so someone built some, yeah, well, I think 100% what you're saying, like, it's very resonates a lot with me because, building a building an AI startup in 2012 in hard mode, we had this massive list of things that we wanted to do and no time, and
no
stuff,
time to do it,
cool stuff
right?
like that. Yes,
And
things that
they
could,
always, because you always got your punch list of like the sharp edges and those launch blockers and those things that build community, those things that create great engagement, those things that those soft
yeah,
parts of a product that actually really make or break what you're doing. It's so hard to prioritize them.
yeah. They get shoved away and yeah, absolutely. Some
Right.
little bit of magic gets lost.
Exactly. And so now you can, right? Because now you can go have Kiro or Claude Code or whatever. Go just do it for you. And it
Yeah,
just works.
and it just works. And yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, so how do you think, so when you think of this Renaissance worker concept, is it, yeah, how do you think it changes like the organization? Is it, obviously a lot of people are worried about, teams going from, 50 people to one person, but what do you see on it?
I think I guess I think I see AI agents in a little bit more synergistic uh, relationship. Certainly, as the technology evolves, they'll function with increasing autonomy.
Yeah.
But I think we'll say they're complementary to the way that humans think.
Hmm.
Um, and I do think that going back to like Amazon's two-pizza team structure, right? Uh, I think they get us, for a company like our size, it actually gets us back to the way we like to operate. With greater agility to be able to notice and respond to what our customers need with more agility. Because, as I say, over time, particularly again at a company like our size, that sort of long list of must-do stuff is never ending, right? There's
Right.
always security patches, there's always resilience work, there's always region expansion, there's always all of
Yeah.
these things that um, are absolutely critical and very hard to say no to. And in fact, you really can't say no to them.
Right.
Um, but as we get to a world where those things are easier to automate with kind of certainty and trustworthiness,
Right.
I think that allows humans to be their best selves. And that is, being matrix thinkers, thinking innovatively, noticing problems, talking to their customers, and then
Yeah.
being able to actually not just have this long wish list of things they want to do, but turn that wish list into action, which earns their customers trust, shows a level of agility and resilience. And
Right.
that's the future I'm excited about. I appreciate there's all sorts of different points of view on what the AI future looks like. But
Well,
I tend to be hopeful.
yeah, no, I mean, well, it's interesting that some of the stuff we're saying. How big is a TPC team normally?
So two pizza teams, traditionally, you should be able to feed them with two pizzas. So typically it's going to be 6 to 8 people.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Things.
right. And ideally it's composed of the right types of people to tackle whatever job, whatever problem set you've got. Um, historically that may have been like a couple, test engineers, software engineers, some web developers, some product folks. Um, but as I say, as we've needed specialization, deep security expertise, how do I make this resilient at a global scale? Uh,
Okay.
it's tough to fit all of that into two pizzas.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. So you're kind of thinking that what AI unlocks for us here is kind of shouldering some of the burden that those teams get saddled up with in a large organization, and maybe it just unlocks more productivity by either handling that stuff or being the expert or
Right.
things like that.
And
So
also to allow experts to sort of amplify themselves, right? Like, I don't think any of us will ever say we have enough security engineers, ever,
right, yeah,
right? We always want more.
yeah.
And that, there will literally never be enough security engineers on the planet.
There you go, folks.
Um,
People that want to know what to study. This
seriously.
I get asked
Um,
this all the time. So
right? And so, like, how, for example, do we let our security engineers force multiply themselves?
yeah,
Right? So we talk about things like shifting left in security work, right? How do we get security in from design period? But like, look, I can't have a security engineer in every design meeting. That just doesn't scale.
right, right,
So how could I have a virtual presence that does a good job, you know,
right,
maybe not at the level of, a world-class security engineer, but good enough to get me started.
right. No, that makes a ton of sense, and I think that it alludes to sort of where we have to be, which is, the humans still provide we provide the drive and the direction, but we also provide the trust, right?
Right,
We're not going to be able to just let these systems, it checked off in security, security agent checked off, we're fine, let's deploy it. We're not
right.
going to, culturally be able to do that, and it wouldn't be a good idea if we did, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Our trust will also grow over time, right? Like remember, you were talking about Amazon in 2000. Um, there was a lot of people who did not trust putting their credit card number on the web in the early 2000s. They
yeah,
didn't. Some of it because the technology needed to evolve, but some of it was because that trust building exercise that comes through demonstrable reliability, transparency,
right.
sort of ongoing high quality performance, that runway just hadn't happened yet. And AI needs to go through that trust building exercise. I think we're in the midst of it right now.
Yeah. How long do you think that takes?
I think we certainly can learn from the past of what we've needed to do to build trust in technology in the past and use that to accelerate trust building, both through the demonstration of trustfulness, but also through the core technological elements that we know are core to retaining trust, right? That is, and that does come down to things like security and privacy and traceability and observability. All of those things are things that we've learned historically about building technological trust. And, we need to make sure that those things are built in to what we continue to build in the AI space now.
Yeah, that's I think you make some really interesting points because, people get really freaked out about how the world's going to change in a second, but the credit card example is such a great example because the truth is back in 2000, everyone was rolling their own credit card gateway basically, right?
Yep.
And a lot of them weren't encrypted and there were a lot of problems that happened in a lot of places. And then, like you said, so those people were right to not trust in some ways, right? That just put your credit card in and then, as you said, the building of reliability and transparency and all that stuff, like with AI, will get us there, but it's really it's a human thing. It's not a
Right.
technology thing, right?
Right.
We have to get comfortable with it. But well, thanks so much, Erin. I think the super exciting stuff that you're working on, and really just awesome to see your perspective and have your voice at the conference. Really appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. My absolute pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to the conference.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna